Kia ora koutou katoa. Children, throughout most of recorded history, have been seen as the property of their fathers, similar in that sense to women and children. It was the father in the ancient Roman world who determined whether a child would live or die. It's estimated that some 20 to 40% of children were either killed or abandoned, with some of the latter surviving as slaves. A child was a nobody unless the father accepted him or her within the family. It was girls who were more often the victims of rejection. And this is the context for the stories of Jesus welcoming and blessing children. In Mark's Gospel, Jesus takes children in his arms, lays his hands on them and blesses them. These are the bodily actions of a father, designating a newborn infant for life rather than death, for acceptance, not rejection. Scholars think there may have been a debate going on in the early Jesus groups about whether to adopt abandoned children, with some leaders staunchly opposed. Mark aligns Jesus with adoption. Jesus, he says, was good news for children, especially vulnerable children. In John's Gospel, the author goes a step further than just welcoming children. He tells the story of a young boy who, in response to the hunger of a crowd, offers 5 barley loaves and 2 fish to help feed them. The incredible thing here is not the multiplication miracle that's well known, which is actually about aligning the prophet Jesus with the prophet Elijah, who also fed people. But the incredible thing here is having a child as the catalyst. It is this child who gives up all he has in order to serve the needs of the many. It is the child who is the exemplar of faith. And it's the disciple Andrew who doesn't get the starry write-up that his brother Peter does, who recognizes this child's faith for what it is, the courage to try and make a difference. All through the Gospels there are these stories of faith, not just Jesus' faith or his closest followers' faith, but the faith of marginal people, people who had little or no power or prestige in the usual run of things, people who were misfits, like the Syrophoenician woman whose child is suffering, like the leper who returns to give thanks, like the tax collector who repays those he's wronged 4 times over, or like this boy who gives up the little food he has because he sees a great need. Can you imagine a church today made up of foreign women, lepers, tax collectors and children? Or made up of Samaritan women, Pharisees, beggars, widows and fishermen? Churches with people of all shapes and variety, of privilege and poverty, of varying beliefs, of faith and faithlessness. For maybe one way to understand the 4 Gospels in the Bible is that they are reflecting not so much historical events or historical people, but the great variety of folk, the wonderful and the wacky, the insiders and the outliers, who were part of Jesus groups when these Gospels were written. And maybe that is the clearest sign of what a church is or looks like today. Not a group who are sent to a creed or the Bible or the Book of Order, or have a minister to lead them, or elders or a bishop, or have a building to worship in with cross and communion table and parking. No, maybe the clearest sign of a church today is one following Robert Fulgham's tale that makes space for and welcomes giants, wizards and dwarfs, roiling in wild disarray, and even makes space for and welcomes mermaids, those who are different, who don't fit in. One of the things I used to do to relax was read the British Church of England newspaper. The Church Times is arguably the most interesting of ecclesial newspapers anywhere in the world, and it would invariably put a smile on my face. Like the minister from Basingstoke who amused himself making Lego cathedrals. The Lego company, pleased to have a collared disciple, made Lego organ pipes especially for him and for his followers. I suppose we could start a Lego club here. Like the numerous clergy who have love affairs with trains. I kid you not. Big train sets that expand out of the minister's study into the hallways and beyond. Or going for picnics on hillsides where one can watch the trains go by below. My theory is that things that go where you plan them to go are very appealing to those whose day-by-day experience is usually the opposite. And then there is the minister with his rhinoceros. The vicar of St. Mary's in the town of Dalton-in-Furness created a fiberglass, 5-foot-long rhinoceros using wood and carpet rolls. He intended it to be a mould for future models that would then be displayed, put in appropriate places around the town. Why rhinos? Why rhinos in Dalton-in-Furness? The justification must surely be a church kindergarten project with an ecological purpose, or at least a fundraiser to repair the church roof. Yet the Reverend Alan Mitchell offered no such explanation. He just liked rhinos and making them, and then finding sponsors to make more of them. He told the Church Times he wanted to build 10 of them and call them the Rhino Rumble. Defies reason. And that is the point. There is no reason. Attracting people to church, feeding the poor, or changing the world does not motivate this rhino's creator. He made it just because he made it, because he liked to make it. What I enjoy in this story is visualizing the vicar working away in his garage on something totally disconnected from normal church life, in fact, normal life, period. There he crafts a statue that seemingly has no point. One of the things I love about churches, any church, well, most churches, is that at their best they try not to be a club for the like-minded, but a symbol that all can and do belong. Reverend Mitchell is such a symbol. His countercultural love of rhinoceri, making them, and not seeing any conflict between this and his ministerial vocation, is a wonderful reminder that in the vast ecology of God, there is a place for us all. Sometimes the Kiwi version of church leadership worries me. Leadership is hailed and hallowed as professional, educated, pastorally competent and hard-working. These are the values that silently predominate, are what we are meant to aspire to, even as we preach a gospel of inclusion. Where is the room for the oddball, the mermaid, the rhino lover? Eccentricity and difference need to be valued. Otherwise, we might lose them. And in my nearly 40 years as a minister, I've seen our denominations losing them more and more. Many parishes, though, are attractive to the wonderful and the wacky in our communities. Such folk enliven and brighten our common life as church and keep the clergy on their toes. I remember one woman, Irish Catholic, bruised by life, who would regularly interrupt my sermon, hollering, "What do you mean by that?" It's probably what others were too afraid to ask. I came to appreciate her contributions, though not her chatty phone calls at 2 a.m. In my time, I've worshipped with a giant, who didn't look like a giant, but I suppose you never know. With a time traveller from the 16th century, with Jesus Christ's aunt, as well as many more mundane pedigree. I've worshipped too with lawbreakers and lawmakers, with animals and those more behaviourally challenged, the harried and the harassed, and with the gentle and the ready smilers. If I wrote a gospel reflecting those 40 years, it would be full of people like you find in the Gospels. It is truly a privilege to minister, to open one's arms wide and say without hesitation that all giants, wizards, dwarfs and mermaids are welcome. All are welcome to enter, participate and commune. All are a part of God's wonderful and wacky ecology. And this is what baptism is we, the church, opening our arms wide and saying today to this young girl, you, Georgia Eden, belong. Not because of anything you have done, not because of your parentage, whakapapa, connections, intellect, beauty or wealth, all of which you may have in spades or not. No, you simply belong as all belong in the wonderful ecology and embrace of God, which we try to emulate. We need to be always aware that God's acceptance of a person is not restricted to those we think are acceptable. That God does not share our fear of difference, that wants to judge and separate. For God's love is so broad, there are no boundaries or conditions. God deals with the dissenters and doubters by welcoming them. God welcomes the Lego makers, the train enthusiasts, the rhino crafters, the time travelers, all those who are wonderfully eccentric and different. This is immensely encouraging and hopeful, for it means even with all our foibles and failings, all our beliefs or lack of them, God still welcomes even you and me. Blessings to you this week.